Please welcome Julia and Leigh McCloskey.
Thank you.
Also, if you haven't seen, there's a table out front that has a lot of these books, so you can check those out if you want.
I got all the way this over here.
Thank
Excellent. Hi, everyone. Oops. Hi, everybody. Do I have power? There we go. Thank you all so much for coming and supporting our programs here at the Malibu Arts Commission. And I'd like to thank, first of all, this wonderful band and everybody who comes out. Yeah, thank you, Eduardo, and everybody. You know, this is, first of all, we know we do 6 shows every year, 4 solo shows, and a youth show, which we just closed, and a big community show in the summertime. If we have artists here and people, we do send out like a call to artists. So if you are interested in being part of that, or you know somebody who would, if you can just let Amanda or Kristen here at the city, you just email them, and we have a form that artists submit to the commission. But I'm so happy to have Leigh McCloskey here, and yeah, to do this amazing. He's so deserving of this major show. And can I have, just to start it off, have a show of hands for anyone who's actually been in his place? Okay, so you,
Wow.
So all right. So that's good. So we all know what we're talking about. And any of you who haven't been in his place, I really recommend you signing up on that thing and that Carla has out there. And does everyone know Carla? They're over there, Carla McCloskey? Yeah. Okay. So anyways, Leigh, I'm so happy to have you here.
Julia, am I?
You're on.
I am delighted to be here, and I just want to begin by saying to you and Fireball a big, big thank you, because what you might not know, I am the son of an artist.
Closer to you.
Oh,
There you go.
I am the son.
He's an actor, but he needs reminding. Needs direction.
Yeah, don't give an actor a prop. I'm the son of Joseph G. McCloskey, and he and my mom moved out to Malibu in the early 50s. And so I grew up out here, and he was one of the founders of the Malibu Art Association. So I was very blessed to grow up with a home where art was relevant. My father was a painter, and as he would say, when you can't talk about something, paint it. And he also stressed very strongly, and this is what Carla and I have really done with our home, which is to open it up, because creative people, but just people in general, need to inspire each other, because we do the critique for ourselves. The last thing we need is, oh, you know what's wrong. It's, of course we do. We want to know what's right, and let's work from there. So that's why I feel like this is, for me, at this ripe age of mine, I feel quite honored and quite blessed, because this is my hometown, and it means the world to me. And thank you, Julia, because you had the...
Well, we do like to support Malibu artists, and gosh, there are not that many people who actually have been born here your entire life here.
Yeah.
And by the way, his father, Fireball, and I were had just recently visited, and all his artwork, this beautiful impressionist art.
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. So you grew up around that? Did you start painting when your father did, or you were inspired by him? Or?
I think like most kids, I wasn't really appreciative of what I had. I wanted to climb trees and ride motorcycles, but I did. I found that the environment of the studio, of people coming, of people being curious. I think one of the things that really struck me was, I remember my father saying when I was very young, but it stuck with me. He said about a neighbor, he said, I can't believe that someone could get so old and lack such, any curiosity. And I thought the element of curiosity, I think, was what really was the greatest gift. Was I grew up with parents that until the day they died were interested in the world. They were interested in ideas and in really the conversations that inspire rather than fatigue.
Did they invite people into their home like you do now, you and Carla do? Was it that kind of, I love the salon kind of feel at your place.
And that's especially when I was young. Yeah, there was a constant flow of really fascinating people that would come in, and and my dad also owned, if anybody was out here in the 60s, my dad owned opposite the Malibu Pier, or the old Tongolay restaurant, a place called the Gallery. And that was really where Malibu would meet, and it had really a pot-bellied stove. They'd have wine, they'd do classes, but it was where everyone would meet. It was a centralizing place for the creative community to meet and have conversation, and that is something I feel is imperative if you have an opportunity to do that.
And when did you really start painting, like seriously painting?
I never thought of myself as a painter because my dad was a painter. When your dad's a really good painter, you don't go, hey, I'm a painter. It's like, no, my dad's a painter, I'm an actor. And I think that one of the things about being an artist is that I was freed from the cultural identity of being an artist in a way, because my dad said about when you can't talk about something, paint it. And I used that actually, Ken Marshall's here, and we went to Juilliard together. We were acting, he's an extraordinary actor and friend, and and I found that at Juilliard is when I was playing a character in Skin of Our Teeth that needed or wanted to kill his father. And I couldn't find the legitimate energy for that. I knew I was faking it. And so I had seen a calligrapher talk about chi, about prana, about breath, and how that it wasn't about the optics, but really the energy, this capturing the breath, the feeling. And I thought, well, that's really like acting. How do you capture the emotion? How do you not use something to create an optical image, but how do you use paint itself as a way of exploring the emotional nature? And so I started with a big pad of paper, and I had.
Can you hear him? Okay.
Can you hear me? Is this yeah?
Hold it closer because he has important things to say.
Oh, okay.
There you go. There we go.
That what I did is I would get large pieces of paper and pigment, and I started using really my hands, my arms, because I felt very disconnected from my body. Like there was a disconnect. And that's where it started to teach me that, because we live in a culture that is about art and artists as a profession, as opposed to using the tools of the creative spirit to explore the nature of the question you're asking. And that's why I think I was freed from having to be an artist so I could use the tools of the artist to connect with character. Mm-hmm. And that really became very important. Like you see the drawings outside on my work on the tarot. That was not me illustrating something that I had seen, but much more like an actor saying, if I played Hamlet and another actor plays Hamlet, it will be Hamlet, but they'll both be very different. And I think this helps us understand what archetype is, that you're not actually dealing with very different things, you're dealing with core ideas, that from those core ideas, they will stimulate a creative story, a creative journey, and that's what the tarot was.
Yeah, I certainly have a question about your inspiration and just the way you create, or maybe your process. First of all, I think I first went into your place. I was trying to think about maybe 15 or 18 years ago. Is that right? Could that be possible? I mean,
yes, yeah. 22 years, yeah.
That's a pretty interesting story. If you could share about how you started painting your studio.
Yeah, well, that I believe is very. See, we're used to, in our culture, we've found a way to make art irrelevant, or unless it's very expensive. And I think that this is a disservice to a certain degree with what its purpose is, which is to connect. And about my studio, on 9/11/2001, and those of you that are coming up to see it on Thursday, or will come up at another time, it is an important realization that art is the language of creation, that it is literally a way of communicating. And in the same way dance communicates or music communicates, because it does inform us, not intellectually, it informs us in a way because it embraces us. It allows us to experience our inner sensibilities differently. And so on 9/11, when the towers in New York came down, I didn't expect to paint my entire studio, but I went down to the floor, almost like in an opera, where if the artist was in the Sistine Chapel shouting at God and the Pope, the artist falls and collapses off of the scaffolding, meaning the great vaulted importance of what I think about God or what I think really collapses on that day, and we're left on our knees. And in my home, my floor is linoleum, and I realized that, symbolically speaking, we were left on our knees on the ordinary, meaning we had not turned into gold. We didn't know what to do. Why have we come so far only to be this? And from that core moment, a language, literally a rhythmic language called the Watcher language, started to flow through my pen. And that I can liken to, if there are musicians here, you know what it's like when you lean into a riff. You're not figuring out how to do the riff, you're allowing it to flow through you, and it begins to mentor you, it begins to take you, and you begin to lean into it, and you begin to allow it really to become the informing presence. And that's really what's happened over the last 22 years, because I've worked every day painting the floors, the walls, the ceiling. A lot of the paintings you see out there are actually, they're permanent, they're much larger, and they're permanent, they're fixed to the ceiling. And what is most remarkable is 10 years into working on it, the hieroglyph of the human soul is what it called itself, and I said the acronym is THOTHS, which is Thoth's or Taught, Thoth's Library, and the tarot is called the Book of Thoth. So there's all of these overlays that I really do think, if you think from a theater point of view rather than a belief point of view, you start to appreciate that maybe the last questions, because this is art, are intimate. They're what do we do with where we live, not what's wrong with the neighbor, but how do I tell my children, how do I tell those I love that being human matters? And that was really what triggered me, as I looked at my daughters and my wife, and I thought, I think being human matters. I think it's a noble enterprise. And I think for all the pain and all the difficulty of being human, when you are in, as I am where I work in a library, you start to think, wait a minute, we never got out of the difficulty, ever. We took the difficulty and turned it into something that made life a bit more bearable. And that's what I love about art, and why I'm such a big believer in tell the better story and begin with where you live.
So all your work comes out of your imagination, or you're not using a model or a person or a still life or anything. It's just all just coming out of your imagination. Is that right?
Yeah, it's like this painting here. This is the universe's organism, and this is the original size. Everything here started from a basic or a premise or a question, because I'd been studying a lot of different esotericism and theosophy and things, and I felt like one of the problems was that if I cut myself, I bleed. A formula doesn't come out of my head, math doesn't pour out of my head, organic elements pour out of me. So I thought, I'm interested not in the universe as concept, but the universe as organism. And I wanted to know, because of physics, I wanted to really explore the nature of multidimensionality. What's very interesting, because I didn't expect it to happen, but that in the idea of, let me explore with my brush and pen, what is the nature of multidimensionality, that these works, 10 years after I had completed them, a friend of mine, Don Estes, said, with the hieroglyph, he said, did you look at this with 3D glasses? And I thought, yeah, really? Right, Vincent Price and Wax Museum. And then I put on the glasses and I thought, oh my, this is fixed multidimensionality.
That's when you go down the rabbit hole, Fireball, with the glasses.
Yeah.
You have to go and put the 3D glasses on. Isn't one of these, is this one that's double-sided?
Yeah, this double-sided I didn't bring, because I had the... Those are very large pieces out there, but in real life, they're like 4 times that size, just keep in mind. So everything is
just immense and awe-inspiring. Yeah. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, and I feel like one of the great things is that usually we look at individual works. We don't realize that maybe there's a cumulative message. And part of the cumulative message, and this has to do with Malibu, we're on Chumash sacred ground. And growing up out here, I always felt this profound relationship with the land, with the custodial responsibility to the land, and that if one is fortunate enough to live here, one is not taking from it, but trying to give back because it's an honor to be here. And with that attitude, I've always felt like the guardian of the land. I've always felt that my art, this is one of the things that I found interesting, is that my work on the archetypes is downstairs. My work on the hieroglyph, the human soul, which is in color, is upstairs. And I feel that part of the symbolical story going on is that the question, it's almost like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, right? I want to go home. She didn't want to stay in Oz. She didn't care whether it was color. She didn't mind going back to the black and white. What she wanted to know was that there was more behind the difficulty of the black and white world than just difficulty. And when she came back, she saw more to each person because she saw with the eyes of love. To me, this is a great deal of what the arts try to do, because this is where we are generous with each other. We don't try to instruct each other, we try to liberate each other. Because an interesting conversation is far more of a thing that allows each of us to be animated, to be lifted together, rather than to be in a series of critiques or a type of exhausting political diatribe, which doesn't feed but diminishes one's capacity. That's why I've always loved the arts. It's like, as I say about theater, about music, is what we try to do is to say everyone is in anguish to one degree or another. So let's not make it about that. Let's take the anguish and make music. And you know what? Suddenly we'll be singing, we'll have a different experience, and it'll allow us to see the world differently. It won't change the world, it'll change how we see the world. And to me, that's the whole point. There's nowhere to go. There's no place to get to now. It's the sense of what do we do while we're here.
Can we do some questions? Do we have another mic? Do you know if our phone? Okay. Do we have any, does anyone have any questions here before the end of it? If you can, do you mind just coming up and use the mic? Or here, that's right, Fireball.
Thank you very much for your talk.
Thank you. Thank you.
Your art, we've been able to see both outside and in, thank you. And in here seems to be enriched by different experiences, maybe that you had in a younger time, including mandalas from Asia,
Right.
including color and the relationship between Sonia's sounds and you translating that into complex color works.
Mm-hmm.
Did that ever?
Yeah, I would say that everything that I've done is based on a certain set of questions. And a lot of it was the sense of, like, my work with color, like when I was working with oil painting, up until the turn of the century when the towers in New York came down, when I start the hieroglyph, I have to move from oil painting to acrylic. And I was an oil painting snob. I mean, I thought, oh, you know, it dries too quickly. But you can't walk on an oil painting. So my hand was forced. And I realized that part of it is that it forced me, in a way, to create more and more of a larger system that is balanced between color, black and white, between form and abstraction, and that each demand, and that's what I started to think about with acting, like if you're doing a classical piece or you're doing Tennessee Williams, or there are different demands on the actor in terms of style. But what's interesting is that the style itself teaches you as an actor because you engage it. And that's what I found with the colors, with the conditions, like painting the hieroglyph. When you're painting a linoleum floor and then you move up onto the spines of books, or you move up onto a chair that's made of cloth, you're constantly changing the demands of the medium itself. And I was talking to Fireball, because he's an artist as well, that oftentimes the medium that you're using is the instructor, because you can't do what you could do With oil, you have to change, and I feel like when I'm in the studio, when I'm in the hieroglyph, that the shift from the oil to the acrylic allows there to be a buoyancy, because I realized if it was all the oil color, it would be almost terrifying because it would be too dark. I almost feel it balances, we'd say, the yin and yang, the masculine and feminine. There's a buoyancy and a gravitas.
Let's see if there's any more questions. Any more questions? Okay. Oh.
Please hold it a little closer.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Other questions, anybody? Raise your hands.
Well, you can't divide, I don't know what I want to say.
Oh.
Hold on, we have a question over here with the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I can bring it to you.
Two things. Number one, the statement you made about the anguish, and instead of diving more into the politics, dive more into the arts. I really needed to hear that. That was fantastic. Secondly, do you get downloads? Do you see visions? Do you get, when you're painting, is something working through you? Are you seeing visions? Are you getting information? What's happening? How do you?
You know, it's not I think a lot of, there's a sense that it would be visual, like a visionary state is visual. But if you think of it more musical, it's more like the body knows. And because it's not, I realize that things come up through me, through my hand, and then they become optical. Because I'm not even sure what it is that is trying to, you know, it's not like, oh, I'm drawing a fish or something. It's more like, I don't know what this wants to be. I often liken it to, like when you're looking at clouds and you go, oh, look, there's a dog. Or that it's that level of consciousness, which is really not assuming a shape, but starting to allow the shapes to become the next, you know, in other words, to grow from that. So I never know what's going to appear. And that's what's really, really interesting for me, because I've had different mythic characters show up.
I was going to say, is something working through you? Is something, are these characters working through you? Are they painting through you? Are different?
I do think that we have a very limited understanding of our human psyche. And I liken the work on the tarot, I often liken it to say, look, if you consider the tarot not as a belief system, but more like a piano, and the keys, as they're called, like characters in a Shakespearean play, that the point is that the instrument holds all the different characters. Our psyche also holds all these inner characters. This is why when we dream, we have all these different characters that show up. Why in our outer world there are all these different characters. It's because there really is an active, interactive state. And what I found when it is about something working through me, especially now, yes, I feel like I'm the happy gardener that didn't realize that because I wasn't getting in the way of it. It was growing and growing. Now it's grown into, you know, after 22 years, the environment is manifest. And so in that, yeah, I liken it sometimes to almost like putting a body together, and the last part you would put on is your head. Because if you had your head on first, you wouldn't have to build the body. But you don't know what you're building until finally you go, oh, boom, you put the head on. Oh, that's what this is. And that's why I use, when people come to the house, I say, look, you're looking at 43 years here. You're not looking at one work. And usually art is looked at, oh, this was this time or this time, as opposed to, no, you're actually understanding that, and I believe it really mirrors us as human beings, the art in my house, because it's saying, look, in the 20th century, we were dealing with the black and white sort of between systems. Is it Buddhism? Is it Hinduism? Is it atheism? All of these different systems. And with the collapse in New York of the towers and the Pentagon, that it really was the falling away like the towers of Babel, like, and I say the twin towers of money and God, meaning I have more than you do, I have more money or more God than you do, be obedient. It collapses, it leaves us needing to trust ourselves. So I think that it's inside of us.
Let's get some more
Thank you.
questions.
This woman over here. Just trying to get my answers.
See if we can get a bunch of questions in before we have to wrap up.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, Lee. What is it? I'm off.
No, you're on.
Oh, no, just speak closely to the mic, Jane. Yeah,
I
okay.
didn't know what that sign language meant.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that when I was just kind of rushing down the hall to get here in what I thought was about 10 minutes early instead of late, I heard you talking about the painting that you did, in particular in the center, the second from my left. That
Yeah,
one.
yeah.
and that you were looking, not, that, I don't know, it's something like, it reminds me of the 60s. It kind of blows your mind to look at those paintings.
Yeah, yeah.
That series of paintings. Because you can't really even, I mean, you could come up with a left brain discussion about it and a right brain discussion about it, but what you actually have to do is experience it.
Yeah.
You said it so beautifully in your video and on the stage today, with your eye, with your heart, with your, you know, and it's a process. And I
Beautiful.
think it's especially relevant because our whole culture is in a process
Yeah.
right now. And it's, you know, it's pretty,
Well, you know,
moment, and it's a terrifying moment.
yeah. And I think that that's why I think of a lot of times an autoimmune reaction, meaning that it's not something big now, it is something intimate. And part of when we're talking about anguish, part of the capacity, I believe, to utilize our human condition is not to continually try to escape it, but to actually turn inward and to honor it. And that's why oftentimes I feel that what the hieroglyph is about is, in anyone's home, this exercise of saying, let me designate a place, doesn't need to be big, that I say is sacred. This is the place that I will honor the yes rather than the yikes of life. I will say, this matters to me, even if it doesn't matter to others, it matters to me. Let me be the primary relationship with this. And I feel like that's what we're being asked to do, because if you think about painting, this is all first technology. It's just paint and storytelling. And to me, that's what brings the humanity back. It's not something being done for us. It's giving ourselves permission, like gardeners, to actually plant a seed. That's why even in my tarot work, you don't have a magician. You don't have somebody that's tricking you. You have a magus. You have a bearer of seeds saying that if you want to grow the garden of wisdom, you must plant a seed. It's not a concept any more than a flower is a concept. It's a thing of a greater beauty that comes from what you have put into it. And to me, that's why I think we're a remarkable species.
Is anybody else? Yeah.
What's your process when you set out to paint? Do you know what you're going to paint?
I don't. I don't know, because it becomes, I would say that that's my relationship. In other words, it's like a dance, that I don't know where it's going, and then suddenly something will happen and it will start to bring me into a different rapport. And that's why when I go to bed, when I'm painting on something, the next morning I could wake up and it'll be a different painting.
How long would it take you to do, what's your, you know, does this?
That took
do you
about
come
2.5 years, maybe 3
Yeah.
years. So I spend years on these things, yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
process different on thematic pieces like the tarot?
The tarot was the only place that I've used preliminary sketches, because you're dealing not with just your experience of it, but I was really studying. I read hundreds of books on it. I mean, I was really doing due diligence in terms of wanting to know the history, the depth of this. So all of that, a bit like playing a historical character, you put that into the crucible, and like rehearsal, the sketches. You sketch and sketch and sketch, and then something finally does start to animate the thing itself, a bit like where a character for an actor awakens because of the rehearsal process, or the dance in the dancer's body awakens because of that moment, that where the work put in. Yeah.
This one back there.
Yeah.
Regarding your comment earlier, it's great about using the arts, both visual and the music, as a window kind of into a reimagining of these traumatic experiences. I've been fascinated with your tarot, having seen them all now in one place. It's a beautiful collection. And how do you perceive your evolution from going from that mode into a larger, more, pure mode, where you're doing these oils, these massive scales, and how is that the window into what you were previously envisioning with the tarot?
A lot of my work, because many people know that I've had discussion groups in my home for every week for the last 43 years as well, and I do believe that the work on the tarot, because that took 17 years, And I did not even think, it wasn't like, I wasn't a person that went, oh, I've got to do this. This is like a life. I wasn't even that interested in the tradition. It was really by chance that Ed Steinbrecher, who did the Inner Guide Meditation, which was based on Jungian active imagination, tarot archetype, and natal astrology to understand in a way the blueprint or the wiring of an individual. And he asked for some drawings, and I said, so that already existed to use for his book. And I said, well, why don't I try drawing them? How hard could that be? When you're dealing with any of these systems, never hubris. Hubris is where they grab you and say, you're coming with me, kid. Because for really, I didn't have the idea. It had me. And I put it this way. If I had gone in there and started studying it and had not been as awakened by it itself, it would have been, nothing would have happened. But it was like walking into a treasure trove of ideas, of psychological insights, of depth that was just sitting there, ignored. And the actor in me thought, wait a minute, I'm interested in exploring the psyche. I want to know why we're wired the way we are. We are contradictory entities, and I wanted to know what's going on. And a lot of my work, I realized, was creating the foundation that by the time I start the studio, I don't go crazy. Because these energies pouring through you without any context could make you quite mad. Which is why I might be quite mad.
Do you have anybody?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
This is a quote from Anonymous here. There's a question and then there's an answer to it. I just kind of want to know from your perspective, from the depth of your artistic reach, how you would interpret this. The question was, the depth of my consciousness causes me to suffer. Is it a blessing or a curse to feel everything so deeply? And the answer that they provided was, the only way out is through. You take more of the thing that poisons you until it turns into a tonic that girdles the world around you.
Yeah, and I put it this way, that when you find yourself drowning, and the only condition is you're going to drown or you're going to learn to swim, and you say, I need help, and it says, none given. You know how to do this. What do you mean I know how to do this? You know how to do this, but I'm drowning. Yeah, you're going to drown until you realize you are the one that's going to do this.
Right.
It's not going to come to you. It's not going to be, Deus ex machina. It's not going to be the hand. You're going to do this. And I think that that's the alchemy. Realizing that no one is going to do it for you. That's the comforting illusion that, hey, you want it, we've got it for you. It's like, no. Because when we're dealing with the inner self, and we're dealing with the secret self, we're dealing with the self that is hidden from others, that self doesn't let the self go. And a lot of my work I was plunged into my unconscious when I was about 14. I mean, really just nightmares, sleep paralysis, out-of-body experiences. I was plunged into conditions that I said, I know I'm not crazy, but if I don't find a way to bridge it, I'm going to be crazy. And I feel like that's what, oftentimes the torment people feel. You are tormented because essentially it triggers a type of reaction within you. Like, it's almost like when people talk about giving, when they quit drinking finally, they don't usually do it in the 10th hour. They usually do it in the 12th hour, meaning like, this is going to kill me. Then they make it reminded me of the Zen story about where the disciple says, when will I be ready for enlightenment? And the master takes the student by the hair and pushes his head in the water in the stream and just keeps there. And the kid is just about dead from drowning, pulls him out. He says, why did you do that? He says, when it's that important to you, as the next breath, as your next breath, then you'll be ready. And I feel like that's the point, is that the things that drive us are not, and this is one of the problems with a medicated society, is that oftentimes the very things that drive us mad are the very keys to our own deeper sanity. And I say that from experience.
Another question? Anyone else?
In relationship with that, the word pharmacia, the word pharmacia means the remedy and the poison.
Yes.
So basically,
Yeah.
that's all related to pop.
Yes, and if you think about the poison, I mean, because that's in everything, and I think that that's our, in a way, we are the transmutive force that takes the impossible, the despairing, and the anguish-filled, and realizes at some point that yes, that is a given, but that is not a permanent state. Only I can counteract this, and I feel like this is why these things challenge us to develop our own character.
Do you have like an advice for the creatives in here? All the creatives. We have artists in here, we have musicians.
How many artists are here? Raise your hand if you're an artist.
Yeah.
That's
Wonderful. You know, I do. I feel like artists, you know, I tell artist friends, I say, look, we've got to stop asking people what they think about our work and ask them what our work makes them think. Because otherwise, one is a critique, the other is a conversation. And I don't know any artist that really needs help with the critique. Do you know, really? Do you really need, oh, well, you know, of course, how would you do it? Tell me.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah.
Lee. I noticed a lot of the descriptive words you were using, like psyche and consciousness, feel quite material, but when I look at your work and I hear you talk about esotericism and theosophy, it sounds like something beyond the human is potentially coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what you're doing as fundamentally the work of the psyche, or something that's tapping into something beyond that?
That's a very interesting question. There is something that if I could liken it to, and I was really feeling it when I was walking the paintings, I thought, there is a cumulative gnosis. There's something behind it. And I think the grace is, and think about this, that think about a quality of consciousness that said, if I got in the way, it wouldn't be you. Because going back to that sense of if you know how to, if we're what, not out but through. In other words, if these qualities interfered, it would not be ours. And what I get is this, and it's really quite meaningful to me, is from this other quality of consciousness, it's the level of respect held for who and what we are. Meaning that if there was interference, it would be just transmitting something in one state to another. But the fact that it slows down, it goes through our human condition, that it makes us have to assimilate it through our experiential self, suddenly we take what could be known almost, you'd say, generally as the one, and it's broken down and expressed. The one then is expressed through all of these different voices. And that's what I do. I feel that there is something that is full of a type of generosity that doesn't, this is what I even heard from the Watcher language, this relationship to, it said, we are the qualities of consciousness that do not interfere. Because if you did, you would have someone to blame. And I think that that's a very interesting thing to think about why we are left alone. Maybe it's not a bad thing. Maybe we feel it's a bad thing because we wish somebody had come along, but at the end of the day, we realize, no, I'm the one that has to come along. And maybe that's, maybe that's the key, as you finally grow up to experiencing, like when I'm in the studio, in the library, I get the sense of, oh, I get it. Wait a minute. If you think of one question, what does it mean to be human, right? Now, like an electron following the path of infinite probability, as Feynman said about the atom, I thought, what if that's what we are, the human atom, meaning that each of us have been following a unique path of human probability. We don't realize it, but we're really spinning together, creating a larger capacity for the qualities we think of as greater consciousness to be translated into the human condition. Because if it's not translated into the human condition, we cannot grasp it, literally, like a quark. It just flows through us. So we're like a net that slows these things down. And Einstein said that reality is thought slowed down to a rate where we can perceive it. And I just feel that it's fascinating.
That's lovely.
We have time for one more question. Anyone burning desire?
I have a comment that it was inspired by what you said. I think you just
when you compare us with atoms moving around each other,
Mhm.
I think you just gave the definition, the physical definition.
Well, what if the way we...
Actually, negative entropy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is negative entropy.
Entry,
I don't
yeah.
think it's negative, but
Negative. It's taking order. It's taking chaos into order. It's neg entropy.
right now I feel our world could use more order.
Well, because think of coherence, right? That what if we've been spinning to finally create a coherent human state that is no longer about leaving, but finally being present. We could be located. You know, it's like it allows us to finally, I believe, to be able to no longer be trying to leave, but finally able to stay. And when we do that, we will realize we are the technology, that what we are trying to forward engineer is actually if we can back engineer ourselves, we answer many of the questions we're thinking about in a forward motion. And if we understand that, then we are a technology that is self-regulating and self-limiting, meaning that, like anything, if you have a flower, you would not let it open quickly. You would resist, because it must open naturally. And I feel like that's where we're at, and why the artists in the room, the creative people in this room, and the thoughtful and loving people in this room, I do believe very strongly that we are the medicine, that the human story changes because we allow it to. So thank you.
Thank you. You know, Leigh, yeah, thank you. Are we going to have the band for a minute? Are we going to have the band up in? Okay. Yeah, so stay around. We're going to have the band play us out here of this. But gosh, you know, so amazingly, just your work, and to be, I hope you can really have a chance to sign up out there and go visit this whole, it's really, it's a Malibu icon, really. I mean, I don't even know where this can exist, to be honest. So you really need to see it if you're part of Malibu. So take him up on his offer, and is there any other way they find you? Or?
The one thing I do, like many, I put things out on YouTube. But a lot of my talks they're not long, but they are to hopefully do like today, is I'm convinced that if we think rather than simply react, if we do attend to the better version of who we might be, that we are that which then cultivates the possibility of these things. So please, Carla has the sign up for Thursday. If you can come up to the house, I'd love to share that with you. And then we also have a sign up sheet out there. And I'd love to answer any questions, anything anybody would like to talk about. You can tell I like to talk. So.
Julia, thank you for Leigh McCloskey.
Thank you.